Well, good evening, and welcome back to Texas Talkin, the only show where political correctness is optional, common sense is mandatory, and the cowboy hat is non negotiable. I'm your host, Shiloh Platts, coming to you from the great state of Texas, where we still believe energy should come from power plants, not press releases. Now, tonight, before we sit down with our guest, let's talk about something that controls your entire life: energy. The stuff that keeps your lights on, your AC blowing during those insufferably squelching hot August days, your truck running, and your groceries from spoiling while politicians give speeches about the future. And in Texas, energy matters more than feelings, which brings us to the Texas Railroad Commission, an agency so powerful, so consequential, and yet so badly misunderstood that most people think it involves locomotives and little hats. Can't say I blame them, but it doesn't. It regulates oil, gas, pipelines, and the backbone of the Texas economy. In other words, it decides whether Texas stays Texas or becomes California with better hot sauce. Now, here's the problem, folks. For years, this office has been treated like a ceremonial ribbon cutting gig. Smile for the camera, say all the above, and quietly let federal regulators, ESG investors, and DC bureaucrats run the show from 1,500 miles away. And somehow we're supposed to pretend that's conservative governance. But every once in a while, thankfully, a candidate shows up who actually understands the assignment. Enter Beau French. Beau French is not here to apologize for Texas producing energy. He's not here to sit quietly while Washington tells Texans what kind of stove we're allowed to cook our breakfast on. Beau French is running because Texas should control Texas energy. Period. What a concept. He understands that oil and gas aren't dirty words. They're the reason Texas has so many jobs, leverage, independence, and the ability to tell federal regulators, politely but firmly, hell no. And here's the part that really terrifies the ruling elites. Beau French actually knows how the system works. He knows the regulations. He certainly knows the players. And he knows that if Texas doesn't fight for its energy industry, someone else will happily shut it down for us. This is not rhetorical. It's not theoretical. We've seen it. Winter storms, grid scares, federal overreach dressed up as climate policy, billions flowing out of Texas while politicians nod solemnly and do nothing. Beau French is not that guy. He's running to make the Railroad Commission what it was meant to be: a shield for Texas producers, a wall against federal interference, and a guarantee that Texans, not bureaucrats, decide how we power our state. So, if you like your lights turned on, paychecks that clear, and a Texas that doesn't ask permission to exist, then you should probably pay attention to this race. That's why we're glad Beau French is here tonight. And so, ladies and gentlemen, you know exactly what time it is. Let's get dialed in. And joining us now is the former chairman of the Tarrant County Republican Party and now candidate for Texas Railroad Commissioner, Beau French. Beau, welcome aboard.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. Look forward to our discussion.
I do too, and I want to start out by clearing up a couple of very common misconceptions. We've addressed this in our monologue, and that is the Railroad Commission doesn't actually have anything to do with railroads. Aside from that, what are some of the most common misconceptions that the average voter may have about this office, and why is it so important?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's really a funny office in that it is, arguably our most important industry in Texas. The oil and gas industry. We supply, almost half of the oil and gas for the entire United States. So it's critical in that regard, and it's the largest industry in Texas. And so, and it touches so many things. It touches, and it touches every Texan's life because obviously, it contributes to, what gas prices are, and if you drive a car or buy any product, it's half the products are made out of plastics, and so really it crosses almost everybody's desk, and so critical, but an odd office in that most people don't know what the Railroad Commission is or have never heard of it and couldn't name the people who sit on the commission. So it's one of those things that it's really important, but not that many people know about it.
So, what made you decide to run?
Yeah. Look, I was born in Midland, Texas. Well, actually, I was born in Fort Worth, but I grew up in Midland, Texas. I just happened to be in Fort Worth. My parents were visiting my grandparents, over Christmas when I was born. But yeah, I grew up in Midland to a dad who was in the oil business. Both of my grandfathers were in the oil business. My family's been in the oil business for over 80 years. It's
One might
critically
say this is
important.
in your blood.
Yeah, it's critically important to me and my family. I have done a lot of different things in my career, but a lot of it has been in and around the oil business. I started one of the first like, real jobs I had after working. I worked for my family, for my dad. When I got out of college in the oil business for a few years. But this was in the 90s. The oil business was not great. And Midland was a little bit of a ghost town. The benefit of growing up in Midland is I really saw, what boom and bust cycles look like.
I imagine so.
Midland certainly was, a beneficiary of that and a victim of that. But in the 90s, I decided that I'd not work for my father anymore. That I wanted to go out on my own and make it my own. And so I took my experience that I had in oil and gas, and I went and I got a job at an investment firm focused on the energy sector. So I spent 15 years, focused on the energy sector, investing in the energy sector, and then, but also as a side gig was always, investing in personally, mineral deals and various oil deals that came across my desk. I've just always been an investor, something I've always done and done well at, and sorry, my phone is ringing. I'll turn that off. And then
I would
I
expect it to be ringing and you to be busy running for statewide
Yeah,
office,
I
so
know.
no
I
worries.
get that a lot, and there were some good news today. So
Good.
just getting congratulated for that. But yeah, so I've been involved in security businesses where we were actually operating in the Middle East, specifically, protecting large oil and gas companies against the threat of Islamic terror. And
We're going to talk about that
even
next.
had a business where we were protecting oil tankers going around the Horn of Africa from Somali pirates. So
Oh,
this is not, all
timely.
it all comes full circle, when you think about it. But so I've done that, and then my father passed away in the early teens, and my brothers and I took over his business, obviously, and so I still have an office in Midland, and I'm there, occasionally. And we are, currently involved in oil and gas deals, and have been doing that for a long time. So, it is a major part of what I've always done. It's not something that I've really ever talked about. When I've been in the public eye before, I'm kind of known for being, the Tarrant County GOP chair, for instance, and I'm known for being an investor. But I've always been vague on that because I don't love telling people what I do in my business life. I mean, that's kind of personal, and but obviously it's relevant to what I'm running for. So it's important that people know, that I'm not just coming from left field here. This is actually something that I've been focused on, pretty much my whole career.
Something else you were focused on up until very recently, and as an observer of statewide politics, Texas politics in general, I would say you were very well at performing in was your role as Tarrant County Republican Party chairman. Of course, you were a very outspoken critic of the rise of radical Islam in Texas and Sharia law and its consequences all over our state. How does that issue specifically, you kind of alluded to it a minute ago, specifically play into what you would do at the TRC?
Yeah. So, look, this is an issue that I just know a fair amount about, right? It's just something that I've been focused on for a long time because like I said, I was operating businesses in the Middle East. And it's really frightening because I've seen what's happened here in Texas. And because of some of the businesses I've been involved in, I still maintain some relationships with folks in the intelligence community and, have a pretty good finger on the pulse of things that most people don't really talk about, and that is just the ties to these really radical jihadist types that are here in Texas. They're in communication with the folks in Dearborn, Michigan, for instance, and so there is a lot going on that's not really in the public domain. I think a lot of people are aware of it because they're like, golly, there's like all these new mosques.
Just
But it's
sprouting
more
up.
than that. It's really a plan, right? They're coming here and they are specifically targeting Texas because they have a plan. We're a large state, we're a prosperous state. It's easy to kind of blend in here. It's easy to start businesses, and as we're learning, it's easy to start these businesses where they're laundering money. We've seen this in Minnesota, right? All the
Yep.
Somalis, they're laundering money through these like fake daycare
Clearing centers.
businesses to send money back to their country, to fund politicians, to create more opportunities for them to create more fraud. And believe me, that kind of thing is also happening here in various communities. The H-1B community, for instance, I think we're going to find probably more fraud there than it will dwarf Minnesota.
Oh, I don't doubt it.
Um, but the Islamic community is also participating in this, and so there are certain businesses that we know that they are laundering money through, and it's going to fund these jihadi efforts. Remember, in Texas we had, there was a big, what was that, 20 years ago, maybe now, something like that, the Holy Land Foundation. So
I'm
this
not
is
familiar with
not
it.
this is not new. This is something that's been going on for a long time, and it's all connected to these. I mean, I hate to use the word radical Islamists because Islam is in and of itself radical. It's redundant to say that, but it truly is, and we need to stop it. And I really was the first elected official in Texas that I am aware of. Now, there could have been others, I just didn't know about it, but who was really out there talking a lot about it. So much so that CARE, the
I remember
Council
this
of
well.
American Islamic Relations, they actually came after me and tried to cancel me. So it is something that I'm passionate about, aware about, and I'm just trying to be the vanguard. Trying to be the guy waking other people up to this threat because it is serious. Now, what does that have to do with the Railroad Commission? Obviously nothing directly, but if you're like me, I want to vote for people who are running in our primaries who are going to be, focused on the issues that matter to me. And this is an issue that it matters to more and more Texans. I get contacted by people all the time, and they're like, "Thank you so much for speaking out about this." It doesn't seem like anyone else is. And if you notice, since I've been talking about it over the last couple of years, you've seen other politicians start to talk about it, and now it's kind of front and center on a few of the other campaigns this cycles, which makes me happy that other people have I guess felt more comfortable talking about it, and so I'm confident that enough people are there's going to be a groundswell that we'll finally get something done about it because we've got to stop it.
And you may not say this, but I'll say it because I know it to be true. You mentioned other politicians, elected officials who are now willing to talk about it. I would credit you for a lot of that. And the reason I say it is because there were calls from elected officials for your resignation for speaking out on this issue, but you didn't resign. You didn't back down. You stood firm and you set a precedent that if you're telling the truth, you can tell the truth and not worry about suffering consequences for it. Don't back down from this. And you didn't. And so I think that's important for people to know.
Yeah, I mean that's just kind of my philosophy anyway. My political philosophy is, do what's right, tell the truth, and if it is the right thing and it is the truth, voters will respond to that. I don't really, I don't love politics. I don't love politicians, but I care passionately about our state and
People.
our country
Sure.
and our culture. And I'm just old enough that I've witnessed the dramatic change in my lifetime as to, what's happening in our culture. And I just like I don't think we don't have any more time. We're out of time. We have to make changes now. And so I've just been bold in talking about that. And, 2 years ago, I think I had 300 followers on my Twitter account. It was just something I used to like read other people's stuff. And in just a short couple of years, my account's grown a lot and I've gotten a lot of attention for it, both good and bad. I upset the Democrats all the time. And I've upset some Republicans some of the time, because I think people are uncomfortable with just how direct I am on a lot of these issues. And the way I look at it is, I think voters are hungry for that and want more of that. I think we can credit Donald Trump for a lot of that.
Amen.
He's sort of shown the way as to, this is what the people want, and they're going to reward the elected leaders who are pushing for those things.
So, speaking of change, one of the last things I wanted to ask you about, Bo, is how would you characterize the status quo at the Railroad Commission? And is there anything you would do to disrupt it?
Yeah, for sure. Look, in my estimation, and in talking to my other associates in the business, it just seems that there is I hate to say it, but like a lack of leadership at the Railroad Commission. We've just witnessed the largest increase in regulations in 40 years that just went into effect last year, really spearheaded by my opponent, and he's of course the chairman of the commission now. And so I just, these are sort of like Green New Deal, Biden era, Obama era kind of, almost like their EPA type regulations. And I, I'm a ranch owner. I'm a mineral owner. I have property, in the middle of an oil field. So, I care deeply about protecting my ranch also. But I also recognize we have to balance, regulations. It's not that I'm anti-regulation. We have to have some regulations, but this increase in regulations is just way too costly. It dramatically increases the barrier for entry for new companies that want to come in and be competitive in the oil business. My dad made himself by being a wildcatter. I mean, he was just a small independent guy,
Really?
and he would have difficulty doing what he did now if he were still alive. So I just look at it like this is a business that's important to me, both from an economic standpoint for Texas, for our national security, but also for Texans, right? I want people in Texas to be able to benefit from the business. And if you have teams of lawyers and all of that, then these regulations are not that big of a deal. But if you're an entrepreneur or a startup, it's a lot harder. And so I want to fix that. There's also just been this, I would call it like a centralization of power in Austin. There are regional offices with the Railroad Commission, which makes sense, right? If you're operating out in the Permian Basin,
They're
you
not
know
drilling for oil in Austin.
the things are very different there than say in the Haynesville. It's just like in East Texas. I mean, it's just totally different, right? I mean, the water is different. Everything's different, and so. Um, uh, Having bureaucrats in Austin be in charge of everything and sort of taking power away from those regional offices, to me, just that never goes well. Anytime you centralize power, in a bureaucracy, it doesn't go well. It usually hurts business, and obviously, I'm the pro business candidate. And so I would look to reverse some of that. The permitting issues, I mean, there's just a constant problem with that. It's like we're permitting, the same way we did 100 years ago. I mean, it really is burdensome. And, in this day and age, I mean, everything should be instantaneous, electronic. Why we're not doing that, I don't know. Those are kind of the main things, just from a business perspective. But like I said, or like you pointed out, I'm known for being bold on certain issues. The one issue is just shocking to me. We had my team kind of dig into some things that were going on in the Railroad Commission. I noticed that, some of the things that they would send out would kind of reference these sort of DEI type things. And so we took a look at that, and it turns out that since my opponent was elected to the Railroad Commission, if you rank all state agencies in Texas on the percentage of their budget going to DEI,
Oh, I
a
can't wait
few
to hear this.
a few years ago, the Railroad Commission was 41st among state agencies. Now, today, they are ninth. So
Not a top 10 list I would want to be on.
they have increased the level of DEI spending. So I don't know about you, but when it comes to,
Oh, I think
important
you
work
know
like
about me.
plugging wells, we probably should hire the best people to do that, not
Yes.
hire someone based on their skin color, and that's what the Railroad Commission's been doing. So I will work to end that on day one.
God bless. Well, drawing the discussion to a close, how can my viewers help you and where might they go to learn more about you and your candidacy?
Yeah, I mean, the first place is just my website. It's beaufrench.com. That's BOFRENCH. And then obviously, if you're into social media, I'm on all the socials at Beau French. I think Twitter, I'm Beau French TX. But that's where you'll find me. Spend a lot of time there talking to people and spreading the message. So yeah, would love to connect with anybody.
Well, Bo, I want to thank you for taking time to come on tonight and talk to us. Thank you for helping us keep Texas talking, sir. May God bless you and may God continue to bless the great state of Texas.
Well, thank you and God bless you and thanks for having me on.
Stay dialed in to interviews and content just like this by clicking that follow button on my Facebook page or hit the subscribe button to learn more about exclusive access that you won't want to miss.